I was raised Catholic. My father went to church because it was the thing to do. We had a lot of position. I grew up in the Virgin Islands, very small town. We knew everybody and everybody knew us. It was a Sunday thing to do. You behaved when you were in church. We sat in a perfect row, 4 boys and a girl, and a dad who's 6'5", 230 pounds. You don't make a sound. I had the pleasure of being sent to Jesuit boarding school. My mother thought I would make a great priest or a lawyer. I don't know what that really means. I guess I just talk too much. It was actually there when I realized that away at boarding school with the Jesuit priest that something was missing. That although some of these men were some great men, they were missing something. They were missing the mark. But what I used to do on Fridays was load up the kitchen with beer and wine and booze for the priest. I would go up there and stock up their bars for them, and then they would promptly tell us every Friday and Monday that we should go out drinking. But really that's what developed my life, my religious point of view. And that's what I thought God was all about. Being in a position, what we were in our family life and in that school life, became very self-reliant. I figured I could do everything myself. I very quickly developed my own trinity. I'll use the nice version: girls, drugs, and rock and roll. I got back to the islands and I decided the only way for me to become sober was to join the Army. So I got as high as I could and I drove down to the recruiter station and joined the Army. The military, in that sense, was a good and bad thing. It helped me develop self-discipline, but actually I took that self-discipline and just molded it into that me, myself, I mentality. So it actually just made me, in my eyes now, more rebellious and more self-reliant. Then the Lord brought Holly into my life. I was in the language school in Presidio, Monterey, and I was in Russian class. She was in Russian class. She was studying Russian, and I was studying her. That's what I say, because Russian was really boring and she wasn't. I think our first date was February, I know it was Valentine's Day, February 1987, and we were married by August. Holly had known the Lord. She was raised in the church, in a Lutheran church, but she knew Jesus, and basically just wasn't living with him. Was living without him in her life. And to me, I was just happy. I had the pretty girl and the great job, and I could do whatever I wanted. Pride was just building and building and building, in the sense that I was a soldier. I was a soldier. I was promoted before everybody. I was decorated before everybody. We got deployed from California to Texas and in Texas, August was born, our first one, first of many. And then we went to Alabama, and then Puerto Rico, and then California. And California sticks in my mind because that's the first time I really started even thinking about going to church. There was an old pastor, old businessman, what I thought was a typical pastor. And then there was a young assistant guy who was a surfer, who I thought, now there's a pastor, that's cool. I could listen to this guy talk all day long. I looked at that pastor and I looked at that church and I said, that's pretty cool. That's not limiting. I can still do that church and live life the way I want to live. Which of course I know now is a falsehood of Satan. Then we went to Germany, and Germany was great because one of my favorite things in the world is beer. Germans have the best beer in the world. In Germany for 2 years, and in my 3rd year I got deployed to Bosnia. And right before I got deployed, we talked about having another kid, and I was just like, we got a boy and a girl, what else is there? So, as any good man would do, I decided, let's get my wife pregnant and leave. So I didn't have to deal with the pregnancy issue. And I was walking through Tuzla Airfield, and this guy comes walking up the other way. It's a chaplain, and he goes, "You're Spence. You're that keyboard player from the band in Germany, aren't you?" And of course, my prideful self, I'm like, of course. And he says, I got a keyboard in the chapel if you want to play. As the Word has shown me many times, there's these desert places we go to. And I'm from the islands, so I don't mind the heat. But this is like an ice village that we went to in the middle of December. And that was my desert place. It was this icicle, big icicle that we were all living on in the inn. But then what I started to realize is that first 2 weeks, 3 weeks, I started doing that, started playing music in the chapel. One of the priests came in and said, I need somebody to play music for our Mass. But I was just like, you tell me what hymns you want to play and I'll just play them. So some girl practiced them with me and she sang and I played. And that was the first time I did worship. Music. Church was for a Catholic Mass. And when he walked out and everybody walked out after him, this Protestant guy came walking in, walked right up to me and said, you know any Protestant music? Because I didn't have any keyboard players. So I said, hum it and I'll just play it. So we did some of that. All these things came back to me. Things from school, things from growing up. Things that I always saw, okay, this is great, but something's missing. This is great, but something's missing. And that's why I started writing to Holly. And believe me, I was away at school for 3 years and never wrote a letter once. I think I wrote one letter. So I started writing Holly. At this time, Holly had been involved with the church since Puerto Rico. So from Germany, go back to California. When we were stationed in California, she was involved in the church, and back in Puerto Rico, she was involved in the church. And I was just always working. I was just doing what I was supposed to do, taking care of business. One of the guys one of the chaplains there, who knew me from Germany, handed me a Bible. So I started reading this thing. It's not this Bible, but it's the same word. And I started writing letters and asking questions of my wife. I was always frustrated over the first couple years of my becoming a Christian with not being able to say, on January 1st, 1997, I became a Christian. I kept reading about the grace of God. The grace of God. And one of those chaplains told me, grace is God's riches at Christ's expense. That's what grace stands for. And I had no idea what he was talking about. I was like, whatever, dude. But I kept thinking about the grace of God, and I was reading the Word in no particular order. Nobody to guide me through it. I got blessed with the ability to go back to Germany on 2 weeks of leave, and Abigail Grace was born. We were supposed to go to Fort Bliss, Texas, which, if you're in the Army, you never want to go to Fort Bliss, Texas. So I said, I'm done. I'm not going to Fort Bliss, Texas. I'm getting out and I'm moving to Tampa, Florida. I got a call into Holly and I'm talking to her and she goes, I got these 2 telegrams here. And I opened up the first telegram and it says, your orders to Fort Bliss, Texas have been canceled. I'm thinking, okay, that's fine because I wasn't going to go to Fort Bliss, Texas anyway. I opened up the next telegram. Welcome to MacDill Air Force Base, Tampa, Florida. Oh, you gotta be kidding me. I got selected to be the sergeant in charge of the personal security for the commander of CENTCOM. I got a 4-star Marine general, and I get to catch bullets for him. I mean, yeah, nothing to make you prouder than that. God took care of the job thing. God took care of the move. Boom. Realized I'm going to travel almost 275 days a year. So that's a little rough. But it is what it is. It's, Holly's used to be being gone 3 months at a time, 6 months at a time, a year at a time anyway. I think at one time we were married 14 years, she said. We've been happily married for 14 years because he's been gone for 7 of them. We found a church here, and through many different things, I got involved with doing worship ministry. I read the story of David when I was in Bosnia, and I realized what God had done, and I thought about it from this angle. To me, David's cool, man. He kills things and he plays the guitar. So he's my kind of guy. What I realized when God had anointed him to be king, he put him in a position so that he could learn to be king. He went and played music for the king. That's what he did. Think about this. I mean, he's right there in his own personal chambers playing music, and he gets to hear all the conversations that the king has with other people. He's learning the practicality of being a king. God does everything. God does some great things. Just like, wow, how's this kid going to learn how to be king? I'm going to show him. He's going to get there and watch the king be a king. And then he'll learn to be a better king. Because he'll do what I want. That's what God was doing with me. I'm going to teach you how to be more like me. I still didn't know the Lord. I was doing worship at church. We had 3 kids, but I was really so focused on the world still. And I really didn't even know that God was putting me in a place so that I could see this world. I remember General Zini one time, we got off a plane in Saudi Arabia, and he looks at me and he says, "You're the only person I know that can carry a Bible in Saudi Arabia." Because I carried a Bible right here. I mean, I'm a guy who hasn't even confessed with my mouth, with my tongue, that Jesus is king. I knew it in my heart at this time. And I was painstakingly fighting him. Because remember, my Trinity is me, myself, and I. He'd replaced the myself and I part, but not the me part. So there was still some struggle going on there. At that time, I was getting ready to get out. The military, my 3 years was up. After that gig, there was nothing else that was going to compare. I mean, I wasn't going to go back to getting deployed with a bunch of kids somewhere. So I said, I'm done. And of course, baby number 4 was coming. And the Lord provided a great job opportunity. And then Amy was born. And at that time, now I'm home all the time. And now I'm a banker. It was at that point after Amy was born, and then between her and Allie being born, that the Lord worked on me in the sense of, He made me read about Abraham. And I knew now about the grace of God, the love of God, because I could see it in my wife. I could see it in August and Aaron. And I couldn't let go of the me factor still. And he told me, I'm going to make you Abraham. And he explained to me that he was going to make me Abraham in my own family. There's nobody to look back to. I can't look backwards and say it was Grandpa so-and-so. So what he's given me in my life is that you're Abraham and your son's going to be Isaac. And so on and so forth. And years from now, they're going to look back and say it was Grandpa Doug. Great-great-grandpa Doug who started this great road that we're traveling. That was probably about 8 years ago that word was given to me. And at that point, I just dropped the me.